5 a.m.
Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. This is our public hearing. It's Tuesday, August 28th at 5:45. I'd like to welcome everyone and call this meeting to order and acknowledge that both the press and the public were duly notified in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. The purpose of this meeting is Ordinance 2018-13, an ordinance that is amending Title V Planning and Development, Chapter 4, Zoning, Article 1, General Provisions of the City of Isle Palms Code of Ordinances to provide a new definition for impervious surface, to delete reference to impervious material and to replace it with impervious surface, and to provide an additional regulation related to filling or recontouring of lots, ground elevation, and site changes requiring stormwater management plan. Now, after saying all that, you're going to say, what is he saying? So I'm going to call Douglas Carr up front and ask him to explain it a little bit better than I could.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. This ordinance is the result of work by the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission was tasked by City Council to look at lot coverage provisions that are in the code and standards that regulate the filling of lots as well. And I would characterize these changes as kind of an evolution of what's already in the code. What the Planning Commission did is they took examples of other communities, and Sullivan's Island borrowed basically our code, modified it, added some things to it, and we looked at those changes, and we think that some of them were good, and we've incorporated them into this recommendation and come up with some other recommendations. Currently, under the city's current code, there are established limits of how much impervious surfacing you can add. There are also provisions in there that describe when a drainage plan is required. And in short, a drainage plan is only required now if a owner elevates the grade of their property. If they bring in truckloads of dirt, that triggers the requirement for a stormwater management plan. However, building a house, other types of disturbance don't trigger that. So this ordinance will make three major changes. The first is it will require a stormwater management plan for any disturbance of 625 square feet or more. So a new house, regardless of whether or not they're bringing in fill, will trigger the need for a stormwater management plan. Those plans have to be done by a drainage professional. That would either be a civil engineer or a landscape architect, and that designer has to certify that that work will not adversely impact the surrounding areas. Another important thing that this code does is it sets a maximum limit of how much fill can be brought in. Currently, as long as a design professional certifies it, there is no limit. So somebody theoretically could elevate their lot 6, 7, 8 feet, and as long as the professional says that's okay, our code would allow it. This ordinance sets a limit at 1 foot above the road. That is a provision that was borrowed from the Sullivan's Island Code. They feel like they've had reasonable success with that. Theirs goes above existing grade. This is slightly different in that it goes above the road, but the Planning Commission felt that was a reasonable provision. A third major change is it actually establishes a minimum infiltration rate to be considered pervious. Currently, there's language that describes what's pervious and what's impervious, but there's not a scientific measurable there's not a measure in the code. This would change that and add an infiltration rate of 2 inches per hour, and that is the rate that the Charleston County Public Works Engineering Department suggested would be a good number. It is also the number that Sullivan's Island uses. So that summarizes the changes, and I will turn it back over.
Okay, thank you very much. This reading was, and this hearing, and the public hearing, is because we are voting on this later tonight. I don't think we need to have anything else from this, so this ends this public hearing. Thank you very much for that.
Citizen comments.
I stand corrected. Yes, sir.
I'm Stuart Tessler.
Please come up front and name and address, please.
Stuart Tessler, 349th Avenue, Isle of Palms.
You gotta come to the
You get
mic.
the microphone.
Clean my glasses with my open shirt. I understood that the public hearing was going to start at 5:45. So
Yes, sir.
I sent Mr. Mayor and council members a statement regarding this, because I feel that there are certain inconsistencies in the proposed ordinance. Particularly, it references an approval of the plan by the administrator, and that would imply receipt, review, and concurrence with the plan. And yet, I don't believe the administrator would like to take a legal standing that he is responsible then for the appropriateness and the efficiency of the stormwater management plan that a civil engineer would be providing. I feel that in the event that the plan does not provide sufficient control of the runoff, the city may not be able to further enforce this mitigation because it had previously approved it. The owner's responsibility for compliance with this chapter should be on the landowner, not shared with the city. The city has the responsibility to enforce the code. However, in this section, 54-7, the penalties addresses the structure, because it's a zoning section of the law, addresses the structure erected or to be modified or change of use of the land without first applying or obtaining appropriate permit or permit approval. It's regarding the zoning, not modification of the land surface. So I feel it would be more appropriate to put this under a different section of the bill where the penalties or enforcement can be maintained. Because in this situation, I foresee an attorney just saying, well, you can't do anything. We didn't violate any section of the enforcement portion of the code. As it is now, if there is runoff that damages my property, such that I may have ducks in my driveway, which I have had, because of runoff from adjacent property, I have to take an action against my neighbor. And that's the wrong way for the city to be managing it, where neighbor is suing neighbor. It would be appropriate that the city acts to enforce its own code, but it has to be done in an appropriate manner. I don't object at all to the suggestions that have taken place that are in this ordinance. But I think the manner in which it's going to be enforced is curious at best. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sir,
Yes.
do you have typed comments?
Indeed I do.
Marie loves that.
Yes.
Do we have someone else who would like to talk about this? Going once? Twice? This ends our public hearing. Our council will follow in about 9 minutes. Welcome again to everyone. This is Isle of Palm City Council, Tuesday, August the 28th. I'd like to introduce our meeting, and we'll start off. Please feel free to join me as I start with our prayer, to be followed by our pledge of allegiance, and then our roll call. Dear wise and loving Father, we thank you for the ability to gather tonight to make decisions that affect our community. We ask for your wisdom and guidance in making decisions that will affect us not only now, but for generations to come. We ask that you look over the family of the late John McCain, a great leader of this country who always worked hard for the betterment of our country. He truly was a person who put country before party. We also ask that you look over those who are sick or who may have passed away. And dear Lord, we ask that you look after our military who serve our country, protecting our rights, and over those public safety personnel who look over us 24/7 year-round. We thank you for this community we all love and call home. In your name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Marie?
Councilmember Bell.
Present.
Councilmember Buchanan.
Here.
Councilmember Perrin.
Here.
Councilmember Kinghorn.
Sí, señorita.
Councilmember Lloyd.
Here.
Councilmember Bryce.
Here.
Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Councilmember Ward.
Here.
Mayor Carroll.
Here.
Attorney Copeland. Here. And Interim Administrator Fregosi.
Here.
And just to make sure, I said it once, but I'm going to say it again. This meeting has been notified by the press and to the public in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. The first order of business will be the reading of the journal of previous meetings. Do I have a motion to approve?
So made.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Citizens' comments. Does anyone like to address this? Thank you. Name and address. We already know.
Chris Donovan, address is number 31 26th Avenue. And I want to start by congratulating the mayor, the city council, and our police department on being the safest city in South Carolina. I think that's great. And it's a privilege to live here and feel so safe. Our police department's doing a great job. How they manage the crowds on busy days, like the 4th of July, I can't even imagine, and I'm sure the preparations for Labor Day weekend are 24/7 right now. We're all one island community, and the police department and the residents are the same. It's not us and them, it's us. But lately, we seem to be moving in the direction of an us and them kind of mentality, with residents becoming increasingly frustrated with the policies and the way our officers are being asked or directed to enforce them. Now, you all know about the unnecessary parking tickets I received last month, and I had hoped that it was just a limited problem, and you're doing a lot to address it, and I appreciate that. But then I ran into my neighbor, Frank Lee, and he relayed a similar incident that happened last week. Now, Frank and Robin are up in the mountains. I spoke with him today. We spoke a couple times, and he really wanted to be here, but he wanted to be in the mountains more. So he did give me permission to tell his story and convey our conversation. They had a visitor arrive late one evening at their home, and as they left at 7 o'clock the next morning to go fishing, his visitor discovered a ticket on his car. It was written at 3:30 a.m. for obstructing traffic. The photos taken by the officer did indicate that the tires were several inches onto the pavement. But we have very little traffic at the corner of 26th and Hartnett at any time, especially 3:30 in the morning. And there's no way at any time of day that the edges of his tires could have obstructed traffic. So Frank took the time to go to the police department, and he wanted me to relay that he was treated very kindly and respectfully, and the ticket was changed to a warning. However, he was left wondering why police felt obliged to write such a ticket. Why have they gotten so fastidious about ticketing people when there truly is not a problem? So Frank and I are longtime residents. We've raised our children here on the island, and we're wondering why there's been this attitudinal change. Why all these unnecessary tickets? Obstructing traffic with 2 inches of rubber on a side street at 3:30 in the morning. It's starting to feel like an unreasonable harassment of the residents, and we know that that's not the intention. Nobody wants it that way. It's our police department. We all want to work together. It's not us and them. So what's going on? Are the police being directed to increase such enforcements? Or perhaps it's the addition of so many new ordinances and regulations. We really don't know, but there seems to have been a sea change. So, Mr. Mayor and the members of the City Council, one thing I'd like to say is that you've obviously been very responsive to citizens' complaints and comments. Thank you. And you work long and hard, and I admire you for your commitment. But I'm asking that you be very hesitant about enacting new laws and ordinances without careful thought and consideration to what is in the best interests of all residents, not only the most vocal. So frankly, along with myself and many other residents, and I imagine that you and the police officers do not want to revert to what some of us may remember as a more adversarial relationship between residents and the police department many years ago. We've moved long past that, and we'd like to continue working together, focusing our efforts on maintaining our safe and friendly island. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizens' comments, please?
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Please come up. How are you?
Nice, how are you?
Name and address.
Oh, yes. Nadine Deep, 3305 Hartnett Boulevard, Isle of Palms, obviously. I wasn't planning on speaking, actually. I was just planning on listening, but thank you for your services, first of all. I know how much work that is. So, basically, like everybody probably here is thinking along the same lines, is I've noticed a lot more policing and hiring of officers and beach patrols, and I'm hoping it's just for the summer season, which we have a high traffic. I'm hoping it's temporary because it's actually changed a little bit the feel of the island, and I think one of the reasons we all moved here is to have it really relaxed, and I'm hoping at the same time, I know there's discussions of pool on the agenda, which of course many residents that have children are very excited about that option. So that's about it. I know you can't comment back, but I just wanted to let you know how we feel. Thank you.
Thank you, Nadine. Any other citizens, please? Going once? Twice? Moving on. Reports from standing committees. First up is Ways and Means.
That's me.
That's you, sir.
Okay. The Ways and Means Committee didn't meet in August. We didn't feel like we were going to have a whole lot of business, but it turns out we have several things that we do need to discuss tonight, and we'll get into that in a few minutes. I'll give you a brief overview of the financial statements. Revenues, this first month of the fiscal year, we're 3% of budget, the general fund at 4%, expenditures overall at 4% of budget. Slow month is to be expected in July. Year-to-date revenues are only at 4%, and general fund revenues, general fund expenditures are at 6%. Cash balances, 7/31/2017 was $22,155,000, and 7/31/2018 was $15,707,000. But of course, as we all know, the balance was unusually high last year because of beach restoration. City of Isle of Palms municipal accommodations fee collections are increased 10% over since 2016. Also, state accommodations tax only City of Isle of Palms is up 3.2% from fiscal year ended 17. Charleston County accommodation tax pass-through was down 16%, but we knew that was coming. We've been planning for that all along. They just decide what they're going to give us. Hospitality tax collections, 5-year increase since fiscal year 13 is 42%, but the increase for last year, fiscal year 17, was at 5%. And the beach preservation fee, this year total collected was $1,069,429, which is 10% increase over last year. That keeps going up a little bit each year. We're into the, we just finished the 4th year. The first year was just a partial year. Drainage projects are continuing on, and if anybody have any notes or questions about just a general overview, City Treasurer's here to assist if we need her. No one have any questions? Okay. Then we're going to go to considerations of some of these awards. I talked to the administrator today about maybe deferring this back to the Ways and Means Committee meeting, because it's not really going through a proper vetting process, and we really should have a Ways and Means Committee meeting first and let the public come see what we're going to do. And then if the motion passes at the committee level, then we would present it to the full council. But since we didn't have a meeting in August, it concerns me that this is really not really a protocol, but I asked her if there were some things that we could not consider, but she didn't seem to think that the majority of the items that we could. I will give you her recommendations about the ones that she feels like we could defer. Otherwise, we're going to consider them tonight. The first one is consideration of award of a contract to Applied Management Technology, ATM, in the amount of $62,000 for the design, engineering, and permitting of the Isle of Palms Marina Docks rehabilitation. It is page 36, line 56, Marina Fund, Marina Operations Maintenance Service Contracts. Line item is in the budget of $250,000. So, you want to ask for?
Is that a motion that you're making for a defer, or you want to go forward with this?
No, we're going forward with this one.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Discussion. How many
I could go.
Yes, ma'am, please.
Unless the chair of the property.
Yeah, I'm happy to. We received in total 3 bids, and of those 3 bids, there was a very thorough evaluation and discussion at the Real Property Committee, and it was felt unanimously by the committee that we make this award to ATM, given they were the low bid with the most experience, and experience that we've had as a city as well. One of the bidders we had not so good experience with in the past, and the other one, unfortunately, one of the principals unfortunately passed away unexpectedly. So the net of it was, and I asked this question, what would happen if we rebid this, if we did not accept ATM? And the answer I got was we'd have the same 3 bidding again with the same result. And the same recommendation comes from city administration. So my recommendation is just move forward with it. It's well within the budget and the low bidder.
Any other comments? And this is in our budget, well within our budget. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Ayes have it.
Okay, the second item, which could be deferred if the committee would like to, and I prefer that we did, but I'll leave it up to y'all, is a consideration of award of a contract to Circle H Land Services, LLC, in the amount of $16,610 for supplying, planting, and fertilizing dune vegetation in areas of the city recently restored beach. In the budget is page 30, line 317, Beach Preservation Fee Fund, Maintenance and Service Contracts, $25,000.
I'll make that in the form of a motion.
I'll second.
We have
To approve.
To approve.
Okay, discussion.
Is there any interest in deferring it?
Well, I was going to say, I have a feeling this might be timely in terms of, to defer it would push it a whole nother month out, and I think we need to get the stuff planted in the renourished beach. So I would hate to lose a whole month in hurricane season and not have these seedlings planted.
Didn't we
So-
also discuss this at committee level?
We did.
And directed staff to do this with an incentive program for our residents?
Any other discussion? Yes, sir.
I'm going to just make sure I clarify. I think that answers my question, but this consideration for this contract? Is this coming directly from one of our councils, or is this based on the direction that we gave to the city staff?
Well, it was an RF.
I can answer,
Thank you.
if I may.
Come in.
Back in May, City Council approved an amount not to exceed $26,400 for dune vegetation. This work, we were not able to complete this work in FY18, mainly because we were not able to confirm and secure enough inventory to do this work. And also, you may recall, we thought about organizing a volunteer effort to do the plantings. We were not successful getting that done. The reason why it's in front of you, when we first started obtaining quotes, the expense exceeded the threshold that would require the city to competitively procure this project. Thankfully, doing the bidding ended up being favorably for the city, because although you all approved up to $26,000, the lowest bid that we received was $16,610.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any nays? Ayes have it.
Okay, item number 3, that could be considered for deferment also, but I'll just read it. Consideration of usage of the metal detector for security at city council meetings, including a security officer, at a cost of $200 for 4 hours.
Do I hear a motion?
I move to defer.
Second.
Any discussion?
Definitely.
Hearing none, all in motion to defer, say aye.
Aye.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Mayor. Point
That's
of
all right.
clarification. When we defer something, don't we usually put a time frame on the amount of deferral?
I
or
think
we-
it's going to go back to
to
the
the next-
Ways and Means.
The next meeting.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Any other questions? All in favor of deferring to the next Ways and Means, say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Ayes have it. It's deferred.
Item number 4, consideration of award of a sole source contract, the amount of $25,585.69 to L3 Mobile Vision. I think it's supposed to say 5-inch in-car flashback HD camera systems. Page 28, line 265, state ATAX fund, police department capital outlay, $30,000.
Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve.
I'll second it.
A motion to defer and a second?
No, it was to approve.
Oh, to approve.
To approve.
We have a motion to approve and a second. Discussion.
This was not recommended to be deferred.
Okay.
Okay, any other discussion?
It's well within our budget.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this has been recommended by the Public Safety Committee, so they've already vetted it and made a recommendation to approve. It is a sole source contract. The city currently uses L3 Mobile Vision for the server and the software used, so this would ensure compatibility moving forward.
Very good. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any nays? Ayes have it.
Item number 5, approval of an amount not to exceed $20,000, state contract pricing to TSC Technology Solutions of Charleston for the replacement of city computer network uninterrupted power supply located in the public safety building and the services of an electrician for the removal and installation. In the budget is page 22, line 31 and 40, capital projects funds split 50-50 between police and fire department maintenance and service contracts.
Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved to approve.
Have a second?
Second.
Discussion. Yes, sir.
I'd like to know whether or not there's any concern with the electrical stability in the public safety building and how that might affect any new equipment installation.
Well, I'm going to actually let Desiree comment on that, but this is a very important thing that needs...
I understand.
This has been reviewed and recommended by the city's new IT company. We've been working with them and making sure that the city's network is protected. You all recall that we had to replace the city hall server recently. We have an uninterrupted power supply that just failed a couple of weeks ago, and this would be an emergency replacement of that and would ensure that we would not have any data loss in case of power interruption in the time the generator kicks in. We have not been made aware of any issues in terms of the electricity system while in making this installation.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
this was not recommended for deferment.
Okay, we have a motion to go forward and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Ayes have it.
Item number 6, consideration of an award of a contract in the amount not to exceed $13,000 to American Dock and Marine Construction to replace damaged and missing floats on the marina docks. Budget, page 36, line 56, Marina Fund, Marine Operations, Maintenance and Service Contracts, $250,000.
I'd like to make a motion for approval.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? I would like to say that I drove by there this weekend on my boat, and there's a couple of docks that definitely need tending to right away.
Probably more than 13.
Any other comments?
This was not recommended for deferment.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Ayes have it. Unanimous.
Number 7, consideration of a sole source contract awarded to Hughes Motor for purchase of one Mack flatbed truck at $106,891 and one Mack garbage packer truck at $203,917. Budget line items, page 223, line 53, capital projects, public works, capital outlay, 1/3 flatbed at $35,631, 1/3 garbage truck at $67,973. Page 25, 120, just pretty boring. I'll let y'all read that.
How about I make a motion to defer this one?
This is not
No.
recommended to be deferred.
No, I'd like to make,
I need to get the, excuse me,
I'm sorry.
Carol, if you don't mind, I wanted to get an explanation from the city administrator.
So this is budgeted in the current fiscal year. This is a rebudget from FY18. The reason why the payment would be made when the trucks would be delivered, not when the trucks were ordered, which would be FY19. In an effort for the city to confirm that we're getting the best value from Hughes Motors, we contacted the company that they work with, that works with other Mack suppliers in retrofitting the trucks and making them garbage packers. And they confirmed that there are only 2 distributors in South Carolina for the type of Mack truck that the city needs. One is Hughes Motors, and they have locations in Charleston and Florence. The other one is Sheely, I think it's how it's pronounced. Sheely has locations in Columbia and Greenville. Usually the pricing from both vendors are very similar, slightly lower from Hughes Motors. Also, there is value in having a local vendor. Hughes is located in Charleston for the warranty and the maintenance services. It would not be ideal for the city to have to take their trucks up to Columbia for servicing. It could result in additional expenses and also some lag time between services. Also, interesting to note, the town of Mount Pleasant recently put out a bid for the similar truck, and they received only 2 bids from Hughes Motors and another company. The lower bid was from Hughes Motors, and so we're very confident that the city has the best price for both pieces of equipment, and we're requesting approval from you all.
Thank you.
Okay, I think I heard a motion to defer. Was there a second to that motion? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? Yes, ma'am,
I
please.
just want to reiterate that this is a rollover from last year from the budget. So this is budgeted and something that we just couldn't get last year, so that's why it's in this year's.
Great.
So, yeah, Jimmy?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, comments. I fundamentally understand. I still think it's bad practice to not bid on something this large. And, you know, we can say that there's no value in dealing with somebody else that has locations in South Carolina, but not having any idea of what the differential is in the cost and just, you know, in essence, rubber stamping Hughes repetitively, I don't think is good practice. So I'm not against the purchase in any means. I'm against the process that's getting us here, unless this is absolutely critical that we have it right now. To me, putting it back to Ways and Means, you know, makes more sense for further discussion and potentially putting it out to bid. Just my 2 cents worth.
Any other discussion?
Are these not, they're not state contract, or they're?
No.
Right.
Hearing no other discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any nays?
Nay?
1 nay.
Okay, item number 8, and this is this can be deferred if you would like to. Consideration of the purchase of a beach cleaner and associated cost.
Move to defer.
Second.
Second.
Discussion. I don't mind saying something. Is this something we really need on the coast? The salt air, and we got a great beach cleanup every Monday afternoon.
I think we need to look at it.
Okay.
Just for discussion.
That's all.
All right. Hearing nothing else, all those in favor of saying defer, say aye. Aye. Nays? It's deferred.
Item number 9, last one. Consideration of trailer rental for fire department personnel in preparation of public safety building repairs. Man.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion. Yes, ma'am.
I can give you all some input. So the reason why we requested the mayor to include this on the agenda is to foreshadow you all that once the public safety building repairs are underway, we might need to relocate the personnel from the fire department side into potentially trailers during the time of construction. However, I was notified today and requested by the chief of the fire department to relocate as soon as possible personnel that currently is in the second floor of the building. For quite some time, personnel has been complaining of eye irritation and respiratory issues. For what they believe result from poor air quality within the building. The city commissioned recently an indoor air quality assessment from SMNE, and their report indicates slightly elevated levels of carbon monoxide in the building, which may cause some eye and throat irritation, although the source is unknown. And just slightly elevated, nothing to be too alarmed, but it was present in the assessment. The report doesn't talk about the source of it, but the personnel believes that the source is the diesel exhaust from the Bay Area, which tends to be more prevalent in the second floor towards the fire department side. The report did not indicate any mold contamination or evidence of indoor source of mold growth. However, the inconclusive nature of this report, the fire department personnel from the second floor continue to experience these issues and have asked to be moved, and we're bringing it in before you all because this would be an unbudgeted expenditure. It's not budgeted, and if we need to, we could accommodate these 4 personnel in existing city facilities. However, it could only happen for a short period of time, and we know that the construction and the repairs would take approximately 12 to 15 months. So we are requesting an unbudgeted approval of an unbudgeted expenditure of up to $15,000 to
1.5.
I'm sorry, 1.5, yes, for the rental of a mobile trailer to serve as office space for these 4 personnel, and it could be situated in the small municipal lot. The fire department has already looked at it, what would be the most favorable setup, and this would be an expense for 12 months.
I'd like to make a motion that we go forward with this for discussion purposes.
I'll second.
Second, discussion.
Question.
Yes, sir.
What is HR's opinion regarding this?
Yes, ma'am, you got to come up front.
You've been so quiet all these months. Come on. Yes.
Or
Mike.
speak loudly.
Mike, yell.
Yeah, we finally get one at.
And you're recording.
Thank you.
In much discussion with the chief and with the interim city administrator, I also feel that this would be a very viable solution to the poor air quality. And we've had some workers' comp reportings from our employees and that the poor air quality is affecting their respiratory, their eyes. So we want to make it be a safe environment to work in. And in a makeshift that we would be able to do is to put them in a trailer outside and get them out of that floor, off of
Thank you
that
very
floor.
much. That wasn't hard.
Thank you.
Any other discussion?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any idea where you might come from? The budget is so tight.
We have budgeted funds that are associated with the repairs of the building, so this could certainly be coded to those budget line items. It might, the city might end up in a little over budget in some of these funds, but,
It's $15,000 for these rental units, right?
so the actual quote that we received actually yesterday is roughly $11,000. We are requesting an approval not to exceed $15,000 in case there are any additional expenses with the installation and hooking up the power and all.
Yeah, utilities,
Yes.
you know?
If the fire department can locate this trailer in the small municipal lot, it would not require water hookup because they could use the restrooms in the public safety building. It would only require electrical.
Any other discussion?
And, I'm sorry, one
Yes,
more
ma'am.
thing. If it is situated in the small municipal lot, it would reduce the amount of parking by 7. But, you know, we're heading into the slow season. It might not, I don't think it would impact the parking revenue.
One other quick comment.
Yes, sir.
Just for what it's worth, the incident of reported illness and workers' comp is not insignificant as well. It's not 1. I think it's 4 at this point. We've had numerous filings on that. And I think it's something that is also an expense to the city when we take this into consideration.
Thank you. So, yes, ma'am.
So I just cannot believe we're going back and doing this again. But what is the timeline exactly, and how long do we think they'll be in the trailer? And from what I remember correctly, last time there was only one particular kind of trailer that met the standards that we needed to meet, which was, so we kind of went around and around last time, and turned out there was only one. Do you remember that, Ryan? Kind of trailer that after, I don't.
The quote that we received was evaluated by Chief Graham, and he agrees that what we've been quoted for would accommodate them.
Okay, because I remember we had a trailer, then we had to have the children bring another kind, because it was, which was added expense. So I don't want to recreate insanity that we've already lived through.
I believe that the quote that we received is from the same company we rented last time, so they may already know what our
Our standards are.
our standards are.
Okay, because it's a hurricane season, so you have to be aware of bringing a mobile unit that people are going to live in on the coast in hurricane season. So it was just, okay.
Councilman Rhodes.
I'd like a little more clarification. We're talking about 4 personnel in a trailer that is principally for office work. Are they going to be in 3 different shifts? Are they going to be overnight? I mean, just a little more clarification.
The administrative staff.
Okay. Okay. Daytime hours, and then at nighttime it would be not used.
I'm not sure. Chief Graham, would it be used during the night? No.
Okay.
Any other questions, suggestions? All those in favor of moving forward with this rental of the trailer signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry?
Up to $15,000.
Up to $15,000. Say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Ayes have it, unanimous.
That's the end of Ways and Means.
You know, for a committee that didn't have a meeting.
Mr. Mayor.
Imagine what would have happened.
Mr. Mayor, excuse me. I hate to do this, but could we go back to the financials just one moment? Wasn't fast enough, Jimmy. To want to look at the parking revenue summary.
Sure.
And I think it's pretty obvious that we're losing money in the lots. And we did this intentionally, as I remember, whereas we had one fee on the streets and we had a lower fee in the lots. And now we're losing a great deal of money because we're not seeing the turnover, I think, that we expected to see in those lots. So I question whether we need to reopen this topic at another point in time and look at whether we can afford to lose $100,000.
Maybe we can get real.
Well, you're only looking at 1 month, and it's like that's 16% of the yearly budget, which should be about 8%, but then in the winter it goes way down.
Right.
So we're going to do analysis of the year just ended.
Okay.
Take a hard look at all of that. That's a good point, and we are going to look at it this winter.
I just didn't want to go by with that.
Right, but it is 16% for 1 month.
Yeah,
Thank you for bringing that up.
no problem.
Public safety.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Public Safety Committee met at 5 p.m. Wednesday, August 15th with council members Bell, Ward, myself, our interim city administrator, our city clerk, and our fire and police chiefs. Under citizens' comments, Alice Bova of 403 Palm Boulevard voiced concerns about pedestrian safety on Palm at 5th Avenue for the sake of the neighborhood that includes Merritt Boulevard and now has a new crop of families with young children. She reported that one neighbor contacted SCDOT and was told a crosswalk there would make it more dangerous. We plan to discuss potential solutions at our September committee meeting. Troy Hageman, owner of Coastal Bus Line, addressed the committee about the possibility of his company providing a shuttle service between Mount Pleasant and the Isle of Palms with retrofitted school buses. In old business, we received an update on our managed beach parking plan. Installation of new signs that allow for full implementation of parking changes approved earlier this year should be completed by mid-October. The city is taking several steps to help get the word out with pamphlets and a planned media blitz, email blasts, and the mayor's most recent message in the Island Eye. Police plan a 30-day warning period where they will be giving warnings rather than tickets on the new regulations once the signs are posted, and we'll have another 30-day warning period at the start of next year's beach session. Our interim administrator reviewed an opportunity to clear up confusion on parking from 42nd to 57th Avenues, where we are seeing a migration of visitor parking, but where some people mistakenly believe that they are allowed to park in spots on the ocean side of Palm Boulevard between 44th and 57th, including over the multi-use pathway. Our administration intends to add signs to clear that up and also make it clear that there is no parking allowed on either side of Palm between 42nd and 44th Avenues. Those new signs, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, can be folded into the other signage contract that we already have going on for other parts of the island. We don't need to take action on that matter, but the administration wanted council to be informed because of past concerns about whether signs were needed there in the past. And I don't know if there's any discussion that if there's any concerns that anybody has on that to be shared. If not, we also considered changes to parking pass booklets and voted to recommend the following. Changing the daily visitor parking passes to annual multi-use passes showing the address they were assigned to, and to authorize an ordinance change allowing residents 2 booklets. This is not specifically cited in the minutes, but I believe that the intention was to allow each residence up to 2 free booklets a year. We were also waiting for further input from our police department on whether the part of the pass that includes the vehicle's tag number could also be omitted. And so I will look to Captain Swain.
Yes, sir.
To approach.
Name and address, please.
Thank you. As far as the coupons go, we work with a printer. It doesn't even have to be that specific printer company, but the one that we have been using for permits, we could certainly make those kind of changes on this coupon to not have an expiration date And I think the idea behind it was to, instead of having them as a one-day pass, to have them reusable. In other words, if a resident had a frequent guest or a frequent group of guests that came over, that they would be able to continually use that same coupon or multi-use pass, as you call it, throughout the year.
Captain Swain, before you sit down, would you make that as a form of motion?
Well, I guess, was there any concern by deleting the tag number and allowing the same pass to be used by different vehicles? Did you have any concern about taking the tag number off?
There's already an ordinance in place that says if you alter any of these permits that we issue, you're subject to a separate fine for that. So anybody that would alter it, and they would get a warning up front when they were issued that, and any altering of that permit could result in an additional, a fine for doing so.
But if we actually just took that entry off so that we didn't include it, do you understand?
The booklet number is registered to the home. So the
yes, we could either do it by address or by plate.
Yeah.
That's correct.
So
it would have to be by address, but the
Yeah.
plate would be an option that you guys would decide.
So that's the question. Is there any concern about taking the
There is
plate
not.
off of it? Okay.
Sorry.
That was a discussion.
So, okay. So we had a motion, and we should probably adjust that, though, to include omission of the plate. And
Do we have a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, now discussion. So can we just put the address on the booklet, no tag, and be good for the year? And use it over and over again for that address?
That is an option, but you would not be able to control where it went at that point. In other words, I think the idea for putting a specific license plate on the year-long coupon would be so that that frequent guest or frequent guests could come and visit that resident at that specific address throughout the year and park in the right-of-way, because we are talking about right-of-way parking here is what we're talking about.
So,
go ahead.
So the reason for the discussion around omitting the license plate was to permit reuse, and the idea was that as guests leave, they turn those passes into the residents and resident responsibility to collect them. Because, when we discussed the second book, I said, at some point, if you're writing license numbers on them, and the intention was not necessarily for frequent guests, it was for any guest, and to be able to reuse those tickets. And I brought up, if you omit the license number and use the residential address, make it residential responsibility, then I think we have addressed concerns such as Chris Donovan and some of the other citizens that we've heard from.
That's the way I understood it, too.
Yeah.
Anybody else questions?
No, I would just agree that if there's no concerns by the police of omitting the license plate, then it makes it more user-friendly.
The goal is to be resident-friendly.
Yes.
Okay, all those in favor of...
Quickly, if this motion moves forward, that gives us the instruction and the city attorney to draft the necessary changes to the ordinance to make that happen, and this will go back to the Public Safety Committee to review the actual ordinance language.
So we should not take the vote tonight?
Yes, you may. You
Take the
would be
vote tonight so
directing-
it can go back to public
Correct.
safety.
You would be directing staff and the city attorney to act in accordance with the motion on the paper.
have to change it.
Before we leave it, we've got these two booklets out right now. Can we go forward with just putting the address on there and survive this year?
Yes. Yes. We certainly can.
Okay.
Yes,
All
we
right.
can.
All those in motion, in favor of this motion as it stands, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? And then it's going to go back to public safety for next year.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
But don't go far, because we might need to again. We also heard an update on traffic counts along 41st Waterway and Palm Boulevard from our interim police chief with some complications that you can read about in the minutes. I don't think we need to go into here. Councilmember Ward, the city's representative on the Carter Board, gave us an encouraging report on his meeting with Ron Mitchum, Executive Director of the Charleston, Dorchester, and Colleton Council of Governments that now manages CARTA, and Mitchum's colleagues. Mitchum indicated that they would work with city officials on developing a public transit service through CARTA for Isle of Palms to assist hospitality workers and day trippers, and that the plan could possibly come together within 60 days. I don't know if there's any we want to open the door up for Councilmember Ward to add anything to that, or for others to ask questions.
No, it's just very encouraging. And he offered, and I said, "This is great news. Can I share it?" And I said, "Well, I have to report back to people on the island." And he said, "Absolutely." So he's been in contact with Desiree, I hope, right?
Yes, I have been in contact with the COG about this initiative. The first step in this process is data gathering and listening from the stakeholders that would benefit mostly, particularly related to the hospitality and the food and beverage industries. We have coordinated a meeting, sort of a listening session with these stakeholders, which will take place here September 19th in 9:30 in the morning. We've already reached out to Front Beach businesses, the marina tenants, and also Low Waldoons and the Waldoons Resort, so that they can attend. This will be managed by the city and also by the COG, this meeting, and we'll get a lot of good information, we hope, at that meeting. So we're encouraging everybody to attend, Front Beach businesses and other businesses that might benefit from this type of initiative.
Right now, it looks pretty hopeful.
That's all wonderful.
I was very surprised.
And thank you for quickly moving forward with that. Let's see, we decided as a committee to look at additional issues related to parking and traffic with an in-depth discussion that will be part of the committee's regular meeting in October. We did discuss dog permitting and related policies and ordinances. I'm going to return back to that at the end of our report. We discussed free parking for veterans at Front Beach on the request of Councilmember Buchanan at our last meeting of full council. During our committee meeting, we learned from our interim administrator that per state law, the vehicles with a handicapped placard or license plate belonging to disabled veterans and recipients of the Purple Heart and the Medal of Honor license plates are already exempt from paid parking requirements as long as the vehicles display the special license plates issued by the Department of Motor Vehicles. According to our council, we could expand this to include all veterans. However, and correct me if I'm misstating this, an attorney from Myrtle Beach cautioned that it would omit others who serve the public, and that veterans who do not fall into those special classifications would have to pay for the special veterans license plate at an extra cost in order to participate. Our committee ultimately took no action on that matter. In regard to a discussion of public safety and security for city council and city employees, we approved a motion that the city use a metal detector for city council meetings. City court is already using a metal detector through a contract with a local company that provides the service at a cost of $200 for 4 hours. Our interim chief agreed with the move and recommended that an armed officer attend council meetings to engage any threat. Our interim administrator said she thought the cost could be absorbed into our current budget. Therefore, we also voted to include the presence of an armed IOP police officer at council meetings. Should we wait? We deferred. So, okay, that was deferred in our Ways and Means report. So, our chiefs gave us highlights of departmental reports, which you can look at more closely in your packets. Just a couple of things that I'll mention. They have responded to many calls this summer, including the fatal boating accident on Long Creek that required a multi-agency response. Fire Chief Graham also reported that the young woman struck by lightning at the beach earlier in the season is expected to make a respectable recovery. Several high-ticket repairs came up during the month for the fire department, including work to the 95-foot ladder truck for more than $7,000 and the loss of several AC units in fire stations 1 and 2. Police organized a successful beach cleanup the day after July 4th, and they have started a new Goodwill program called Pops with Cops, handing out freezer pops to kids. We received a brief update on the coyote management plan At that time, the city was not currently trapping due to rain saturation, but a coyote pup was killed on Palm Boulevard in what I think was a vehicular accident. Our next meeting date is 10 a.m. Wednesday, September 5th, in the conference room. And if you'll give me a moment, getting back to the dog discussion, I need to pull up a separate set of notes. Okay. All right. So in terms of, there was a packet included, or there was a presentation that we looked at during our committee that was included in our packet that gave information about dog ordinances. There are definitely some things that we need to clear up. The way the current ordinance is written, it only requires that residents have their dogs registered with the city and receive a tag that the dogs are supposed to wear. Our recommendation, hold on. A recommendation that we looked at after reviewing all of this with the committee was to, hold on, sorry, apologies, tech difficulties. This report, yeah, there it is. Okay. All right, so the recommendation that came out of committee was to change that and require all dogs, resident or non-resident, to have a written permit from the city. Now, there was some, I'm not clear on whether, it's a little unclear as to whether we included a cost, but in the minutes we have that at a fee of $5 for residents and $10 for non-residents to serve as proof of rabies inoculation, and to adopt language in the ordinance to require proof of current rabies inoculation. So that was the motion that I believe was given in committee. That was recommended for council to consider.
So do I hear a motion?
I will make that motion.
I'll second.
Second motion. All right, discussion now.
Yeah, let me try to add some commentary to this. So what seemed like an easy issue to deal with became much more complicated probably than it needed to be. So I've had a lot of conversation with citizens calling and me returning calls to them. The intention here, we as residents have to have our dogs inoculated, have to have proof, and we have a $5 dog tag. The conversation got confused when there were amounts put in the Public Safety Committee packet that didn't reflect discussions that we had. There were no discussions on fees for non-residents, and there was no discussion on raising the fees for residents. So that area, correctly, Chairperson Smith, we did not arrive at an amount. What we did say is if you try to simplify the problem, we have two areas on the island that are probably problematic. One is the dog park, where we have open to any visitor that would like to come and let their dog run off leash. Our beach, in essence, is our public park. So if we go to Mount Pleasant or other communities, dogs cannot run free off leash without adhering to local law. Right? So what we said, if residents are compelled to have this registration on the city, that anyone coming here, we should be assured as residents that they're compliant to the local laws. And the discussion was tagging them with the same metal dog tags, not changing anything different. Nothing changes for residents. Requiring those that wish to come to the beach, particularly off leash, and let their dogs run, that they register with the city. The interim chief Usry said this would make life easier for the police department. Also supported the state requirements for rabies inoculations as well, and would give us an enforceability aspect that we don't currently have. Did I say that well enough, Desiree?
You did.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Yes, ma'am.
I have a little different take on this, and it's not so much about the inoculations. I think that's an important view, but if we have visitors coming onto the island for a day or a week or a month, and they're visiting a resident, and the dog gets out of the backyard, not on the beach, not in the doggy park, but just running down Waterway Boulevard. If we have at least everybody who comes to visit goes to the police department, gets the little tag, we then have them registered, and if they do get loose, we have them on record. And we can identify that dog if it does get lost, and therefore doesn't end up in the pound and overnight in a cage. So I'm looking at this more as an island-wide policy that enables all dog owners to protect their dogs, not just, with inoculations and that sort of thing.
Yes, ma'am.
So, I have 2 dogs that I walk regularly during off-leash hours at the beach, and also occasionally visit the Bark Park. And I'll just say wonderful communities of dogs and their people have developed in both of these areas that I think we all need to take a moment to be thankful for. And I've been talking to a lot of these folks, and many of these people who take advantage of the off-leash opportunities that we provide for dogs would like greater assurance that all the dogs in the mix have had their rabies vaccination, whether the dogs live on the island, in neighboring communities, or belong to overnight visitors. At the outset of looking at the ordinances, I had hoped that we would provide that assurance by requiring and compelling all dogs in these off-leash situations to have city registration with proof of rabies inoculation. With a switch to what I hope that we will consider a collar system, which I think would make a huge difference in actually compelling compliance, I think that we could really make a proactive, positive impact. However, I believe that visiting dogs who are kept on leash or in the backyard should simply be required to have proof of rabies vaccination rather than a city tag, which I think would be an unnecessary burden for people.
Can we?
The motion is about having tags for the dog.
We debated this already at Public Safety. I'd like.
Well, we're here to discuss it.
No point of order. There's a motion on the table.
And we're just
discuss it.
I'm
Discussing the motion as is or amended.
Okay. We're discussing it.
We're not discussing a motion.
Yeah, the motion is to
Okay,
have dog tags for residents,
Right.
$5, and
okay.
non-residents, $10.
Okay, however, I believe that visiting dogs who are kept on leash or in the backyard should simply be required to have proof of rabies rather than a city tag, which I think is unnecessary for dogs in those. Okay, so I would like to make an amendment that we require, in the spirit of making this change more doable and reasonable, I ask to amend the motion to strike the phrase, "all dogs, resident or non-resident," insert the phrase, "all non-resident dogs legally off-leash on the beach and in the city's Bark Park, and all residents' dogs." In addition, the phrase, "for all dogs who come on the island," should be added at the end of the motion, so that the motion would then read that we recommend the city require all non-resident dogs legally off-leash on the beach and in the city's Bark Park, and all residents' dogs to have a written permit from the city at a fee of $5 for residents and $10 for non-residents to serve as proof of rabies inoculation, and to adopt language in the ordinance to require proof of current rabies inoculation for all dogs who come on the island.
Susan, I'd be happy to second it, but I can't remember.
Essentially, what the change does, that change applies this only to visitors who come on the island who are using the Bark Park or having their dogs off leash. It would apply to residents and non-residents in those situations, so that resident or visitors who are coming on the island who are not taking their dogs off leash, who are not taking them to the Bark Park, do not have to worry, for example, if they are visiting a family member, staying at their house, but not letting their dogs off leash.
That is your amendment.
That is my amendment.
Do we hear a second to the amendment?
Ted. Did you second it?
No.
He didn't quite follow it all the way
I
either.
think if I may comment.
Yes, sir,
I
please.
think that your
We need to
intent-
have a second before you get a comment.
I'll second.
I think your intent is very good, but it requires a little fine tuning and simplification. So if we support what amendment is on the floor, you can come back and your committee could review it, come back and change it in the future. We take baby incremental steps.
Okay, so we have a First Amendment and a Second Amendment.
I just have comments.
Yes, ma'am.
As I always do.
Motion and second.
So I think all of this is very worthy. I really do. I just don't see how it's enforceable to really, in realistic terms, to get every single dog that's coming on the Isle of Palms to stop and register at either, at the police station and get a tag. I just think it's unrealistic. I think it's a worthy effort, but I just don't see how it's enforceable at all. It just seems overwhelming to me to think that every dog, like people who are renting, and that they're going to come with their rabies vaccination paperwork, that they're going to pack that with them. It just worries me that it's burdensome and really unenforceable. I mean, we do have a law that every resident's supposed to register their dog, and like 330 people register their dogs a year, and there are definitely more than that on the island. I mean, so we have that in place, and people just don't do it. And so I just can't see how this is really going to become a realistic, enforceable law.
Councilmember Moy.
Thank you. I think Councilmember Rice makes a good point, but I think there are two separate discussions that we need to have. One is, do we feel like we need all dogs to be treated equally on the island, whether they're resident or not?
Paul Power.
Or in terms of protecting dogs and residents alike, do we want everyone to have the same accountability? That's the first discussion that we need to have. If we believe that that is the case, whether it's applying just to residents or everyone, how do we enforce it is the next question. And I don't think we're talking about enforcement in this motion. If we are, then I would voice my support for the collar method that Sullivan's Island uses. I think it's incredibly effective, and I'd look to the public safety, the captain and the chief to kind of direct us in that regard. But that seems to me like an incredibly feasible approach to take in terms of enforcing it. To the initial motion that we're discussing about the dog ordinances.
Okay.
If I may, just...
Mr. Mayor, I haven't had an opportunity.
Yes, sir. Councilman.
Looking at this, I'm trying to figure it out. You're trying to make all, let's say, off-island dogs be tagged with a city tag, just for proof that they have rabies vaccinations. It's currently state law that all dogs, cats, ferrets, horses, all animals have to be vaccinated according to state law. Well, right now, our animal enforcement, correct me if I'm wrong, does not have the ability to enforce state law. So what we need to do is just create an ordinance that states, you know what, animal control, it's just basically a city citation, a city ticket, or whatever. That's what all it needs to be. We don't need to have all of the guests come up and inundate the public safety building to get a tag, when all they have to do is just, prove. Ignorance of the law does not absolve you of the law, okay? So people have to, if people are going to take the responsibility to have a pet, they should know that they have to have their vaccinations with them. It's a state law. So we need to find a way to enforce it out here. And the only way to enforce it out here is to create a city ordinance out here. So if something does happen, then we can enforce that. Or an officer can walk up and just community service. Hey, do you have your vaccination records with you? It's state law. We don't need to inundate the police. We don't inundate the staff with having every vacationer or visitor that comes to this island to go up to the public safety building to purchase a $10 fee or ticket. So, or tag. So we just need to find a way to enforce the law and just create in a city ordinance. And that's what we have, and we already have that on the books.
Okay.
So just quickly,
yes.
by that logic, we could eliminate residents having to register their dogs and have no tags, and then
Correct.
everything would be the same, right? The intent, and I think Chairperson Smith's comment was absolutely correct, and I called interim administrator today and asked this question. The intention here really is dogs running loose on the beach, dogs in the dog park, potentially posing a threat. Those were the areas we're trying to address. The only way we could address those was through the recommended wording that's in this ordinance, and we worked back and forth with the city, with the police chief, to try to do that. But again, and I'm not disagreeing, the logic that Councilman Buchanan is using says, you know what, let's just use state law, right? Then look, let's just stop creating a different set of rules for residents that we have to abide by, and nobody else does, right? So everybody from Mount Pleasant that would like to bring their dog to the beach, that's okay. Just make sure you have a state, you know, your inoculations and your tags for your city, and that's okay, right? But it's not okay for the Isle of Palm residents. We have to have a separate tag. We got to have our dogs tagged. If they're off leashes at the beach and they're a problem, we're going to get a citation by an enforceable law that applies only to the residents of Isle of Palms. I'm troubled by that, right?
Yes.
And I think all we're trying to do, this really was not aimed as a discussion to people staying in Wild Dunes and coming on vacation. But ironically, I've had a couple of discussions with folks that are staying, and they said, you know, honestly, if in my vacation package somebody said it cost me $10 extra or $25 extra, that really doesn't make a large bit of difference in my thinking about coming here or not in the grand scheme of what I'm paying. So, yeah, I'd like to just put it to rest. If we don't want to do it, we don't. But if we do, we move forward with something that's been well vetted, I think, with city administration and with the police department at this point.
Is there anyone else who needs to add to this discussion? We have a motion and an amendment. Let's vote on the amendment first. You've already spoken several times. You want to?
Well, yes.
Go ahead.
I mean, I'm sorry if my motion to amend was not elegantly worded, but the gist of it is some middle ground, so that we're talking about dogs who are off leash and not every single dog that comes on the island, which I think is personally preferable and would stop some negativity for some maybe people who think it's unreasonable for everybody to have to adhere to it.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Related to Councilmember Smith's amendment, I did speak with Interim Chief Usry today about that possibility, and it is their understanding that dogs that are off leash are not the only dogs that pose a threat. We have had instances of people approaching dogs that are on leash who become a victim of an incident. Therefore, having that distinction creates an enforcement problem and does not really protect the city from dogs that are not inoculated.
Well, however, if we are fixing our ordinance to say that you, in any case, need proof of rabies inoculation, that solves that situation as well.
Let's go ahead and vote on the amendment first. All those in favor of Susan's amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
One aye. All those against, nay?
Nay.
Okay, now back to the original motion of having all animals on Isle of Palms, residents are $5, all other pets are $10. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any nays?
Nay.
Nay. 3 nays.
4.
4.
How did you vote?
I voted for it. Good?
So 5-4, it passed.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. That's a hard one. I know, there's a lot to put in there.
Well, I would also like to introduce the discussion on the collar as well.
Well, that would go into public safety.
This issue has been settled.
Yes. Maybe come back with your public safety. So now we're moving on to Public Works.
All right. After that, boy. Public Works met August 1st. All members, appropriate staff were present. Under citizens' comments, Jim Rye came. He had some very thoughtful comments regarding the anticipated Assistant Public Works Director and tents on the beach. Katrina Limbach, who owns Isle of Palms Beach and Bike Company, had comments regarding tents on the beach, and she is researching options for tent rentals that may help reduce the number of tents visitors leave for garbage after their beach visit. And we also discussed the need for a station to refill water bottles near the front beach. So I want to put that on everybody's radar. You'll hear more later. Not tonight. Later. Under the director's report, since it was the first day of the month, we did not have the collection numbers. At that time, the department was very, very busy pumping water on 46th, 50th, and 51st. You can think back to the saturation of rain we had in July, which is a very good lead-in to old business, which is Phase 2 drainage. Actually, yes, old business. The current completion date for Phase 2 drainage is mid-November. The delays are rain-related and the movement of the drainage box and line down 46 to the opposite side of the street to avoid conflicts with other utilities. The Citadel Beach House has worked with Civil Site Engineering to tie into the system, and we have heard nothing conclusive at all from the residents of 47th and 48th regarding their work with Civil Site Engineering and tying in, and that is on them, because those are private streets. Public Works Underground Storage Tank Project, the canopies will be installed within the month, and DHEC will be performing tests on the tanks within the month. We had a proposal from John Garrels to purchase Shep Enterprises, and we will revisit this at our next meeting after he's had an opportunity to run the route with Mr. Shep. And under new business, we discussed several ditches on the island, and if you would like to take a deep dive into the ditches, please refer to the minutes or the website for the audio, because every single ditch on this island has a story. Beach cleaning equipment, we referred this to Ways and Means, which now has been deferred, so we will discuss that at another time. And our next meeting is 9 o'clock in the morning, Thursday, September 6th. And just a note, after tomorrow, recycle will switch to every other week. So the after tomorrow, the recycle next day is September 12th. And garbage goes to once a week after Labor Day. And that ends my report.
Bad news.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry to be the bearer of the bad recycle news.
But a nice report. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Recreation.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The Recreation Committee met Tuesday, August 7th. All committee members were present, as well as the administration. Under citizen comments, Jim Rye approached and said the Rec Center was doing a great job, and just wanted to report that. The director gave her department report, number of things going on in the island. A lot of the summer camps are wrapping up. A lot of the other programs are coming to an end. We're going to start picking up on the fall programs. We have our community wellness fair coming up on the 21st. Our Isle of Palms Connector Run on the 6th. Rolling into October, we have our Ghostly Tide Tales and Halloween Carnival on the 31st. And our holiday street party on December 1st. Basically had some other discussion about the facilities. We had some discussion about, now that camp's wrapping up, to have registration for next year's camp. As y'all were aware that a lot of times we have camp registration during the week. We have people showing up bright and early in the morning during the week. And so we're going to try and look into shifting that to a Saturday afternoon where residents, everybody can show up at a reasonable time to sign their children up for summer camp. We had an update on old business and the farmers market, which is right around the corner. The farmers market will be held on Thursdays in September and October. And then we talked about our Sunday rec center opportunities, and we will be opening the rec center on Sundays, which is new. It's usually closed, so we'll be opening up that for a limited time for basketball and other events. So our next meeting is scheduled for October 9th, 9 a.m.
Great report. Thank you very much. Personnel, I think you had a couple of things you want to mention.
Yes, even though the Personnel Committee didn't meet in August, I do want to report that the Mercer contract, the search firm that we had chosen, has been executed, and that Jim Mercer will be coming into town on September 5th and 6th. We'll be visiting with IOP to initiate the search process of information gathering from council members and staff at this point, basically to get the marketing materials needed to go onto their website and start getting the applications in. We intend to establish a timeline on the IOP website, which we'll talk about more later, so that the residents can keep track of where we are and what's happening. We also intend to, further down the line, to have some open sessions for residents so that they can become part of the process. The next meeting of the Personnel Committee will be September 6th at 6 p.m. We have, every month, you may notice that I report on what vacancies we have in the city, and you may wonder why in the world I do that. But about 5 years ago, there was a real turnover in a lot of our departments, and at that time, Council Member Michael Loftus asked that we give a monthly report so that there are no surprises, so that we don't see all of a sudden council has 5 or 6 or 7 vacancies in the city. So I'm pleased to report that there are no vacancies other than the chief's position, which we are about to get into process. Our sweepstakes winners, as seen in the agenda, are General Government, Laura McClellan; Fire Department, Curtis Helm; Police Department, Melissa Dawson; and Public Works, Russell Roper. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Real Property.
Real Property Committee was held 4 p.m. Monday, August 6th. Councilmember Ferenc, myself, Interim Administrator Fregoso, and Clerk Copeland were there. Councilmember Ward was on vacation, but obviously we had a quorum. And comments from marina tenants, Michael Fem did state once again a reminder that there will be a Residents Appreciation Day that they're hosting with benefits going to MUSC Children's Hospital on September 8th. In old business, we already went over the results of the award to ATM. There was a recommendation for ATM. Already covered that. I'm not going to do it again in the interest of time. One thing I will state, though, there were some concerns expressed along the way in this, that the dock rehabilitation project being linked to the marina referendum was a bit unfair for ATM, and it was well advised by everybody involved, the marina operator, the city administration, and others with experience from ATM, that those were separate and that everybody had full confidence in ATM, and I think the public, frankly, should know that. Councilmember Ferenc did ask that ATM use all the data they've gathered. They do have experience there, but to look at the dock rehabilitation with a fresh set of eyes, and asking in particular that they concentrate on ADA compliance in their scope of work. Obviously, the motion passed unanimously and passed tonight as well. There was an update on the 1100 Palm right-of-way on Pavilion Drive. We're still working through that. We've had surveys done. We're back and forth with SCDOT, the attorneys, the surveys, and frankly, it's just a process. But what we're intending to do is grant the owner of that property the right-of-way to the area so that he's in a position to actually convey title on that property. Update on marina operations and request for documentation. I thank the tenants who've responded to the city's requests. All the tenants have responded to the requests that we've had. Did comment that the rainy weather over those past 3 weeks at this period does highlight the need for the city to make decisions around our finances that align with the highest priorities on the island. And, you know, as we look at the marina and try to make a determination that we're asking ourselves, what is the purpose of the marina as it relates to other residential priorities? And, who's using it and at what level, and how much does the city need to invest? So we did put out a request to the marina operator for information as to how many boat launches were resident and non-resident launches. Received that information the day of this meeting, and candidly, in looking at that information, I looked at it against prior information that we had. And back in 2015, Councilmember Ferenc reported that Marina Manager Berrigan stated that out of 6,000 launch vouchers, 300 of them were residents. That was in 2015. This report that we received currently stated that to date, we had 4,655 resident launches and 1,967 non-resident launches. I questioned the data. I still question the data. I just candidly don't see how that's possible, that we would have a shift in that behavior. And I went as far as to do what I normally do, is put a calculator to it and say, if you took the ATM data that says we have this many privately held boat slips, this many boats on the island as a percentage of residents, and you looked at generously saying a resident could launch a boat 4 days a week because they've got available time, that would be, through the 6 months, 45 launches per day for residents. If you subtract out the fact that almost nobody launched boats in January and February, the data gets worse. And if you cut that down to 2 days, it gets horrendously worse, right? So
This isn't the minutes.
this was the meeting, and it was in the audio of the meeting. Thank you. So with that, what I asked is that the marina operator come back to the city and look at the data again and make sure that that's the representative data that they want to bring forward as we make decisions on the marina. Moving from that, we had a discussion on licensed businesses operating at the marina, no lease with the city or marina manager. The intention here was, as we went through all of the data that was submitted to the city, it was to make sure that everybody was lease compliant to the insurance requirements. So we've been through that exercise for those that are under lease, whether it's Morgan Creek Grill or Tidal Wave or those operating under the marina joint ventures. What we've never looked at is, do we have the same liabilities for people operating commercially from the marina that are not under current lease? And city administration with council looked at that and said, we really have two options. One would be that the city enter into leases with these businesses, or the marina manager could enter into a lease agreement with them. In both scenarios, the boat captains would be required to meet the city's insurance requirements. That was the conclusion of the marina discussions. In marina rents reports, all tenants were current. No executive session. We adjourned the meeting, and next meeting date is 4 p.m. Wednesday, September 5th.
So ends your report. Thank you very much. Any questions?
I have one comment. I feel like maybe the shift in some of the numbers could be that we used to measure the resident launches is actually a resident with your driver's license living on the island, and I think we shifted it to that cost was for property owners as well, which changes the whole scope of things greatly. So I would take that into consideration with your numbers, because there are a lot of people who own property, who have boats, but they may not all actually live full-time, but I think that might be where a lot of the shift has come from. So I would take that under advisement.
Desiree?
Since the meeting, the marina manager has provided updated numbers. It was late last week. I just haven't had a chance to review them, but they will be presented to the Real Property Committee at your next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Reports from city officers, boards, commissions, accommodations did not meet. Board of Zoning Appeals did not meet. Planning Commission, I will say that they are working on a memorandum of understanding between the Water and Sewer Company and Owl Palms properties that are not on sewer and stuff, but that's something that's ongoing and still working on. Special joint committees, none. Petitions received, none. Bills already in possession of council. This is our second reading tonight, ordinance 2018-10, 1513, ordinance amending the Title V as for pervious material and replacing it with impervious surface, and to provide additional regulations related to filling or recontouring of lots, ground elevation, and site changes requiring a stormwater management plan. I'll put that in the form of a motion.
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Nays? Passes. No new bills, miscellaneous. It's already been mentioned once, but I'll say it again. The farmers market is next Thursday, 3 to 7. Our next meeting is 6 p.m. Tuesday, September 25th, 2018. No executive session needed.
Motion to adjourn.
And I heard it. Do we have a second?
Second.
Made, passed.
Was that Ms. Lawrence?